So it's, on the other hand, this is a really good first step, and a lot of work gone into it, and commendations to Commissioner Saltzman and Mayor Hales for creating this committee that gives you and the community the authority to make choices that affect your neighbourhoods. And so thank you so much. I'm encouraged, and the preference policy itself, I think, is brilliant, and I'm glad to see it working out as intended. So thank you so much. Bye. Fish.
Well, thank you for an excellent report and a conversation. And since Dr. Holt referred to promises kept, I'm reminded that the city did not keep its promises under the original Albina plan. And the Albina plan was very ambitious, but we did not invest in it, and in part because we took all the money and invested in light rail. And ironically, light rail ended up being the match for the federal dollars that led to the revitalization of New Columbia, but did not result in much investment in inner Northeast. So that's our history, and we have to acknowledge that, you know, with light rail came some positives, but also accelerated some other trends, as we've seen with infrastructure investments like that throughout the city, which is why I'm very pleased that as we're thinking about rapid bus service and other improvements in outer Southeast, we're now working with the Housing Bureau upstream, identifying how to mitigate the impact, the inevitable impact of rising land values and displacement along those lines. But we learned that rather late because the Albina plan was a wonderful vision, but it did not get implemented. There's only one slide, Dr. Holt, on your presentation I'm going to quibble with because it was superb. It's not a quibble, I just want to qualify it. You said $20 million from Charlie Hales, and Charlie was very generous, and he and Dan spearheaded this, and I give them a lot of credit for doing that. But it really was $20 million that came out of an existing budget that had been allocated for business development. So we did have to, it was a tough choice. It wasn't manna from heaven. It was $20 million out of things like storefront improvements and other things that the community had advocated for. But it was in recognition of the fact that with the housing crisis, the money had to be invested. So I want to just acknowledge that. But beyond that, thank you to you, sir, and the committee for your stellar work. And thank you to Commissioner Saltzman for having been such a staunch supporter of this vision. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, Bishop Holt and the entire Oversight Committee are an essential piece to holding the city and the Portland Housing Bureau's feet to the fire in terms of living up to the promises. Central to that promise is to conduct business in a different way. And thank you, Bishop, for all your hard work, advice, and candor. And I know we've had some rocky moments over the last couple of years, but I've always appreciated your candor in that regard. I think we've listened and made changes accordingly. One of the policies I'm most proud of, certainly, is the preference policy. I want to thank Matthew Chavold and his considerable brain power that he lent to helping to craft that policy into a policy that is legally defensible. And as we can see from the interest shown by displaced residents of North and Northeast Portland, strongly desired. And I'm very encouraged by the results so far, and want to make sure the preference policy remains a part of all of our housing actions in North and Northeast Portland. So I think we're on a sound footing for that. And I realize that while we will not have the funds to correct all of the city's past actions, it is the preference policy and the dedication of the additional $20 million an important step to take action to correct the reality that past actions of the city have, through urban renewal, have marginalized and displaced residents of North and Northeast Portland. So I think these are small, but I think increasingly significant steps. And I also just want to recognize Leslie Goodlow, too, for all her devotion to the North Northeast Oversight Committee and making sure that they are well fed and tended to at their meetings and that they are, and their voice is heard. I know there were a few times, like I said, some rocky moments where things fell through the cracks, but I think, Leslie helped us provide that avenue of communication that I think got things back on track in a good way. So thank you again for all your work, Leslie and Matthew and Bishop and the committee. Aye.
Udaley.
Thank you for your report, and I'm just really pleased that this conversation continues to evolve, and I'm thrilled to get to be a part of it. And I hope that our city can set an example of how to undo some of the historic wrongs brought to us by discrimination. So, thanks. And is this the I situation? Sorry guys, I'm end of the day and
The eyes of March.
yes, I.
We learned.
So I'll just add my laudatory statements to everybody involved in this Housing Bureau. Commissioner Saltzman, you have set a very high bar for what a housing commissioner needs to do to be meaningful in this community. And I appreciate that, and I will do my level best to fill your able shoes in this regard. And I want to thank the Housing Bureau for their work. I want to rip off a quote. I want to be the first to rip off the fire chief's quote from this morning. He had a whole bunch of them, and I wrote them all down. But you know, he said he wanted to have a world-class fire bureau. And then he said, well, what does that mean? And then he basically turned it on its head and he said, I don't want to have a world-class fire bureau. What I want to have and what it means to me is we're going to set the standard and everybody else is going to follow us. And as I'm listening to Dr. Holt, listening to your team talk about this is one of those moments where, as Commissioner Saltzman said, that in terms of dollars and cents, this isn't that large yet. But in terms of what it means symbolically and what it suggests in terms of actual policy innovation, this is a world-class move because it is one of the only things that I have seen on the actual housing front that intentionally reverses the negative trends around displacement and gentrification. And when I first heard that you were all embarking on this some many months ago, I thought, wow, that sounds great. And then I thought about it for a minute and I said, how the heck are they going to pull that off? Because it is very, very thorny from a policy perspective, a logistics perspective, a financing perspective, and not the least of which, as Matthew knows, a legal perspective. And you are on the bleeding edge of innovation here around these kind of policies. And this is where Portland belongs, this is where the Housing Bureau belongs, this is where our citizen engagement processes belong, Bishop. It's bringing the best that everybody has to offer and not asking what's the minimum we can do, it's asking the question what's the most that we can do. And so I think this is a terrific step in the right direction, and it's a good way for me to end my week at the City Council. So with that I vote aye, the report is accepted, and we are adjourned. Thank you.